Late November in Brooklyn is always a little unpredictable. The air's sharp enough to make your skin sting, but you can still catch the last golden leaves swirling on the sidewalk if the wind's in the right mood. That night, our brownstone on the edge of Park Slope was full of comfort, jazz playing softly on the Bluetooth speaker, my favorite old Yankees sweatshirt slung over my chair, and the warm, savory smell of garlic and rosemary as I diced potatoes for dinner. Cooking was my meditation. I liked the rhythm of chopping, the sizzle of onions and olive oil, the way the kitchen windows fogged just slightly as the city's neon glow started to seep in. It was just before 6, that magical sliver of time when New York starts to slow down, at least in theory. Ethan was supposed to be home in an hour. I was half humming, half lost in thought, already picturing his tired grin when he walked in, that sheepish sorry. The subway was a messy routine he perfected over the last year. That's when my phone buzzed on the counter, screen lighting up with a number I didn't recognize, 212 area code, which could mean anywhere in the city. For a second, I thought about ignoring it. These days, between work spam, political robocalls, and random surveys, almost every unknown number went straight to voicemail. But something in me, maybe just curiosity or a gut feeling, made me swipe to answer. Hello. My voice sounded steady, almost cheerful. A pause. Then a breath, shaky, rushed, not the kind of nervous you get from telemarketers or wrong numbers. This was something rawer. Hi, is this Emily? I hesitated. Yes, this is Emily. Who's calling? She never gave her last name, just blurted it out. You don't know me. I'm really sorry, but you need to know, I'm pregnant. Your husband, Ethan, is the father. For a second, I thought it was a prank. Someone had to be messing with me. My brain went blank and busy all at once, 100 memories trying to reassemble themselves like a puzzle dropped on the floor. I waited for her to laugh, to say a just kidding, or to admit she had the wrong number, but the silence stretched. In the background, I thought I heard the city, sirens, maybe a radio, definitely not laughter. Wait, what? I whispered, barely hearing my own voice. I'm sorry, as she repeated, quieter now, as if she was crying or trying not to. My name is Brittany. I shouldn't have called. I thought you should know. I can send proof if you need it. And then, just like that, the line clicked off. I stood there, staring at the reflection of the city lights in the kitchen window, phone still pressed to my ear, as if I could drag her voice back through the line and make her explain everything. The knife slipped from my hand, clattering against the marble counter. The sound was so sharp and sudden, it made my heart stutter. At first, my mind scrambled for something, anything, reasonable. Was this some sick joke? Had Ethan's email or phone been hacked? Was Brittany some old friend or ex who decided to ruin our week for reasons I couldn't even guess? But no matter how many excuses I tried to conjure, the facts didn't bend. Brittany. I didn't know a Brittany. Ethan, as far as I knew, didn't either. And yet, her voice lingered in my apartment, stubborn and uninvited, as if she'd left a cold draft swirling through the room. I suddenly noticed how bright and intrusive the kitchen lights were, how every object, the wooden spoon, the half-chopped parsley, the glass of wine I'd poured but hadn't tasted, looked like it belonged to someone else's life. I tried to move. My body felt both heavy and weightless, as if I'd just woken from anesthesia. My fingers found the edge of the counter, gripping the cool granite, willing it to anchor me. I forced myself to take a breath, then another. The city outside seemed to hold its own breath with me. No taxis, no shouting kids, just the soft, distant wail of an ambulance somewhere deep in Brooklyn. That was the moment I realized everything had changed. Not just my evening, but my marriage, my future, the way I looked at my own home. Ethan's laugh echoed in my head, a memory from a better month. Now it made my stomach twist. In a single phone call, the walls I'd spent years building suddenly felt paper thin. The shock was physical, a deep, cold ache that pushed up from my chest and spread into my jaw, my hands, even my scalp. I didn't cry. Not then. I just stood there, letting the oven timer beep and beep, until the only thing I could hear was my own heartbeat, loud and wild in my ears. Somewhere, Brittany was out there, carrying a secret that had nothing to do with me, until now. And Ethan, my Ethan, he was still at work, or on a subway, or maybe nowhere I wanted him to be. For the first time since we'd set our vows on that windswept beach in Montauk, I didn't know who he really was. That phone call was the end of something. But I didn't know yet that it was also the beginning. I didn't remember turning off the oven, but when I finally moved again, I found myself staring at the pale blue flame, the potatoes scorched on one side, dinner ruined. The kitchen was thick with the smell of burnt herbs and a bitterness that wasn't just in the air, it was in my chest, tight and suffocating. My phone lay on the countertop, screen dark, as if nothing had happened. As if my entire world hadn't just shifted 3 inches to the left. I rinsed my hands in the sink. The water was ice cold, but the shock felt necessary. I looked up, caught my reflection in the kitchen window. I expected to see someone shattered, someone broken. Instead, my face was colorless, my hair a mess, but my eyes looked awake. Sharper. I searched them for answers, for some trace of the woman who'd been chopping rosemary 10 minutes ago. That woman was gone. I let myself slide down to the cool hardwood floor, my back pressed to the dishwasher. The city outside kept moving, headlights sweeping across the wall, but in my apartment, time had stopped. I tried to replay every moment of the last 6 months, searching for clues. When had Ethan started coming home later than usual? When had his phone stopped lighting up around me? When had he begun to feel like a stranger, even as we shared the same bed? The doubt wasn't new, just sharper now, like a movie I'd seen 1,000 times suddenly playing in high definition. I remembered his sudden work trips to Jersey, the times he'd left for the gym but come home without having broken a sweat. The times he'd turned his phone face down on the coffee table, password changed for work security. I'd teased him about being secretive, and he'd laughed it off. Or maybe I just heard what I wanted to hear. Now, every moment in our marriage replayed itself with a new, sinister subtext. The inside jokes, the date nights, the way he'd started buying me flowers after long days, guilt gifts, maybe. I felt like a fool, but not the kind you pity. More like the kind who wakes up in the middle of a nightmare and realizes it's real. I thought about calling him. I wanted to scream, demand answers, force him to confess. But something inside me, call it pride, call it self-preservation, kept me silent. If I called, he'd find some way to explain it all away. Maybe even convince me it was nothing, that Brittany was just crazy, that I was paranoid. The last thing I wanted was to be manipulated. I needed the truth, not another story. Instead, I opened my laptop and started a new document. I typed out everything I could remember that seemed off, random hotel charges, the dinners with clients he never named, the bank withdrawals that never quite matched what we'd budgeted. It looked worse in black and white. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. This was something different. Anger, maybe. Or resolve. The night stretched on. I kept checking the time, expecting Ethan's text to say he was running late, that he'd pick up dessert on his way home, that he loved me. When he finally walked in just after 8, his hair tousled from the wind, he smiled at me like nothing was wrong. Like our lives hadn't just become a before and after. Hey, Em. Smells amazing in here, he said, dropping his bag by the door. I forced a smile, wiping my hands on a dish towel. It was. I got distracted and burned dinner. He grinned, not noticing my voice was a full octave higher than normal. No worries. Want me to order from Luigi's? He kissed my cheek, lingering a little too long, as if he sensed something was off. I studied him, searching for a sign, a flicker of guilt, a glance away, anything. But Ethan was a professional at pretending. I nodded. Yeah, that'd be great. While he ordered food, I watched him from across the room, memorizing every detail, the way he scrolled through his phone, the gentle curve of his smile, the line of his jaw. I tried to imagine him with Brittany. Did he look at her the same way? Did he tell her the same stories he told me? My mind raced, playing scenes I'd never seen, inventing betrayals I'd never witnessed but now couldn't stop picturing. He set the phone down. 20 minutes. Want a glass of wine? I almost said no, almost, but I nodded, letting him pour. I forced myself to meet his eyes. Ethan, do you ever get the feeling that life is just different than you expected? He laughed, pouring a glass for himself. All the time, babe. All the time. I wondered if he realized how true that was. I wondered if he'd ever see me the way I was starting to see him, not as the person he thought he married, but as someone ready for war. That night, I lay awake long after Ethan fell asleep beside me, his breathing slow and steady. I listened to the city, to the hum of the fridge, to my own thoughts ricocheting off the bedroom walls. I reached for my phone, tempted to call Brittany back, but I stopped. I'd played the role of the naive wife for too long. If there was one thing New York had taught me, it was how to survive. I wasn't ready to confront Ethan, not yet. I needed answers. I needed proof. As the first light of morning crept across the ceiling, I promised myself I wouldn't let this destroy me. Not if I could help it. Morning in Brooklyn arrives with no mercy. Sunlight hit our bedroom windows in strips, slicing across the tangled sheets. I barely slept, lying so still I could hear Ethan's every breath beside me, wondering how many secrets he could hold while sleeping so peacefully. By the time his alarm buzzed, I'd already mapped out my day, a plan forming quietly beneath the surface of my nerves. Ethan rolled over, half asleep, pressing his lips to my shoulder. You okay? He mumbled, voice hoarse from sleep. Yeah. Just didn't rest well, I lied, letting my fingers drift through his hair as if nothing was wrong. He hugged me, held me a little tighter than usual. Maybe he sensed the shift, maybe not. I wondered if guilt has a scent. Would I have noticed if I'd paid more attention? He got ready for work in his usual blur of movement, shirt pressed, tie knotted, expensive cologne trailing in his wake. I watched him in the bathroom mirror, my own face a mask behind his reflection. When he kissed my cheek goodbye, his eyes darted away just for a second, and I almost laughed. It was such a tiny tell. If you blinked, you'd miss it. Text me if you need anything, he said, grabbing his laptop bag. "Will do," EI replied, my voice calm, steady, rehearsed. The second the door clicked shut, I exhaled hard, the tension spilling out all at once. I took my coffee to the kitchen table, notebook open, and began to write, really write, every odd detail I'd pushed aside in the name of trust. Credit card statements with hotel names I'd never visited. A pair of earrings I'd found in Ethan's jacket pocket months ago, which he'd claimed belonged to his co-worker's wife. The sudden need for a work dinner on weekends. One time, a lipstick stain on his shirt collar, too faint to be mine, too easy to ignore until now. I checked my phone for Brittany's number. Should I call her? Should I ask for proof? I hesitated, imagining how that conversation would go. Instead, I typed her number into a notes app, just in case. My thoughts raced faster than my heart. The shock was fading, replaced by something darker, suspicion, sharp as glass. But beneath that, a new resolve was forming, hard and unbreakable. If Ethan was lying, I would find out everything. Mid-morning, I called an old friend from NYU, Hannah, who'd made a name for herself working in private investigations. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year. But when she answered, her voice was instantly familiar. "Emily." "Wow, long time. What's up?" Her tone was light, but the moment I hesitated, she picked up on my anxiety. "You okay?" "Not really." My voice cracked. "I need a favor. I think Ethan's cheating on me." There was a pause on her end, then her voice softened. "I'm so sorry, Em. You want me to look into it? Please. I need to know what's real." She promised discretion and asked me to forward any suspicious details, credit card charges, names, dates. I sent everything I'd collected, along with Brittany's number. By noon, I tried to eat but couldn't. My appetite had vanished. Instead, I walked through our apartment, searching for anything else that didn't fit. Ethan's dry cleaning receipts, new cologne I'd never noticed before, 2 tickets to a Broadway show that I never attended. Maybe he'd taken a friend. Or maybe not. At work, I was distracted, fielding calls from clients and pretending to care about design layouts and project deadlines. My boss, a sharp-tongued architect named Sarah, raised an eyebrow when I showed up with mismatched shoes. "Long night?" she asked. "You could say that." She gave me a look, curiosity mixed with concern, but let it go. The city outside my office windows felt distant, unreal, like I was moving through fog. By the time I got home, the sky was already dark, the city's pulse picking up for the evening rush. My phone buzzed. "Hannah." I took the call in the bedroom, heart pounding. I found something," as she said quietly. "Ethan's been meeting someone in Jersey City the last 3 Thursdays. Hotel lobby bar, same woman each time, matches Brittany's description. I have photos, if you want them." I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the world tilt. "Send them," I whispered. Minutes later, the photos appeared in my inbox. Ethan, my Ethan, standing too close to a blonde woman, her hand lingering on his arm, his face soft in a way I hadn't seen in months. Every ounce of denial evaporated. For a moment, I let myself feel everything, the anger, the grief, the humiliation. But then I straightened my shoulders, wiped my eyes, and looked around at the life I'd built, the apartment, the career, the friends who had my back. Ethan had broken something. Yes. But I would decide what happened next. That night, I slept with my phone on the pillow beside me, Brittany's number and Hannah's message my silent shields against the darkness. In the morning, I would decide how to use them. The morning after I got Hannah's photos, I woke up feeling both numb and electrified. My mind replayed every detail. Ethan's hand on Brittany's back, their bodies angled toward each other, as if the rest of the world didn't exist. There was no denying it anymore. He was with her. There was no more room for my excuses or misplaced hope. I stared at the ceiling, the city's usual racket muted by the double-pane windows Ethan insisted on last spring. Back then, he claimed it was to keep out the sirens and let us sleep better. Now, I wondered if he just wanted to keep our life as quiet as possible, to hide his secrets somewhere the world couldn't hear. At work, I tried to act normal. I forced myself through meetings, answered emails, and nodded at my colleagues' jokes. Inside, though, every minute dragged. I checked my phone constantly, waiting for another update from Hannah or, irrationally, a confession from Ethan. But he sent nothing except a text at lunchtime. Ethan, I hope your day's going okay. Let's get Thai tonight. Love you. The words were almost cruel in their ordinariness. That afternoon, Hannah called. There's more. He made a bank withdrawal in Jersey City after meeting Brittany. And he's used your car service account to pick her up a couple of times. Emily, I'm so sorry. I was silent for a moment. No, thank you. I need all of this. When I hung up, a strange sense of control settled over me. For the first time since Brittany's call, I wasn't just reacting. I was planning. I remembered my mother's voice from years ago. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. I'd always thought she was being cynical. Now, I understood she'd just learned to survive. That night, I let Ethan bring home Thai food. I watched him unpack the containers, pretending to struggle with the stubborn plastic lids. He told me about a new project at work, how his boss was driving him crazy, and how maybe we should plan a getaway after Christmas, just the two of us, somewhere warm. The hypocrisy made me want to scream. Instead, I played the part. I nodded, laughed in all the right places, poured his wine. I made him think nothing had changed, even as I memorized every gesture, every careless detail. Was this how he lied to me? So easily? After dinner, he fell asleep on the couch, TV remote loose in his hand. I watched him for a long time, searching for some trace of the man I thought I knew. There was nothing. Just a stranger in my home, dreaming of a life I wasn't part of. In the days that followed, I quietly collected more evidence. I copied statements, took photos of receipts, even checked the dashcam in our car. Brittany had ridden there just 2 weeks earlier. Her voice was faint on the audio, laughing about something I couldn't quite make out. I listened to it twice, as if the pain might finally dull with repetition. It didn't. I met with my lawyer, Ms. Ramirez, in her tiny office overlooking the Flatiron building. She was brisk, no nonsense, the kind of woman who wore power suits and running shoes at the same time. You're smart to get ahead of this, as she told me, scanning my stack of documents. He won't see it coming. Let me do the heavy lifting. Focus on protecting yourself. Ms. Ramirez asked questions I hadn't even thought of: joint accounts, shared investments, the deed to our apartment, Ethan's retirement fund. I left her office feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter, because I had a plan. Heavier, because every step I took away from Ethan made our marriage feel more like a ghost town. Empty, echoing, past saving. At home, I started moving money quietly into my own account. Not a lot at first, just enough to remind myself that I could. I began to sleep again, not well, but better. My dreams were sharper, stranger. Sometimes I saw Ethan's face morphing into Brittany's, or our wedding day playing backwards, the sand slipping away from under my feet. Other times, I dreamed of being free, waking up in a sunlit room where I could finally breathe. One night, I sat in the living room, a manila envelope full of Hannah's photos and receipts spread on the coffee table. I stared at them, heart pounding. The evidence was there, undeniable. But I still wasn't sure how to use it, or when. Was I waiting for Ethan to confess? Or for myself to finally stop hoping? The next morning, Ethan announced he'd be working late again. I smiled, feigned understanding, and wished him luck. After he left, I called Hannah. "Can you find out if Brittany's really pregnant?" I asked. "If she is, I need proof." "I'll look into it," Hannah promised. That afternoon, Hannah sent a text. "It's true." She posted about it on a private Facebook group. "Due in June." And she's tagged Ethan in a comment. He's been replying under a fake account, Eric Green. I stared at the screen, my fingers cold. It was all real. Every nightmare. Every suspicion. I felt hollow, but also steady, grounded by the certainty of truth. That evening, I walked to the Brooklyn Heights promenade, watching the skyline flicker against the river. The city looked beautiful, distant, full of other people's stories. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of possibility. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew it would be my choice, not his. When I returned home, Ethan was already asleep. I stood in the doorway, watching him breathe. "You're not the only one who can keep secrets," I whispered. Tomorrow, I would decide how and when to end this, on my own terms. The next week passed in a surreal blur, a routine of pretending layered over my new life of quiet rebellion. I moved through each day with an actor's grace, holding onto normalcy just long enough to avoid suspicion. In the mornings, Ethan and I ate breakfast together. He scrolled through his phone, reading headlines and sports scores, while I watched the steam curl up from my mug, memorizing the silence between us. He didn't seem to notice the difference. Maybe he was relieved that I'd stopped asking where he was going, or why he got home so late. Maybe he thought I was finally losing interest, that my suspicions had faded. Either way, I let him believe it. Every smile, every soft laugh at his half-hearted jokes was a shield, protecting the plan taking shape in the background. I spent my evenings gathering evidence, every receipt, every credit card statement, every text from Brittany I'd managed to intercept. Sometimes, when Ethan was out, I'd walk to the river just to feel the cold wind on my face, to remind myself that the world was bigger than this one apartment, this one heartbreak. The city moved around me, unbothered by my drama. Dog walkers in Prospect Park, teenagers on city bikes, the distant rumble of subway trains. I let the noise fill the silence Ethan left behind. On Thursday, Hannah texted. He's meeting her again today. Same hotel. Do you want more pictures? I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. No. I have enough. Thank you for everything, Han. Really? She sent a heart emoji. It was the kind of thing only old friends can do, offering love without demanding conversation. After our call, I scheduled another appointment with Ms. Ramirez. She met me in her office, crisp and efficient, already having pulled up dated bank records and legal documents. "You're ready," as she said, sliding a stack of papers toward me. "If you want to proceed, just say the word." He won't have time to react. We went over every detail: joint accounts, property deeds, even a prenup I'd almost forgotten about from our courthouse wedding years before. "You protected yourself better than most people realize," Ms. Ramirez said, half smiling. "It's going to be okay." That night, Ethan and I had dinner together, take-out sushi, because he claimed he was swamped at work here and didn't have time for anything else. I watched him eat, wondering if he was thinking of Brittany, if he ever felt guilty, or if lying had become as natural to him as breathing. He glanced up and caught me watching him. "What's up?" he asked, casual. "Nothing," I replied, shrugging. "Just tired." He nodded, looking almost relieved. He had no idea that his world was already shifting under his feet. When he went to bed, I stayed in the living room, sorting through files and copies of every account we'd ever shared. I called my bank, moved more money into my private account, and set up alerts for every withdrawal. Ms. Ramirez had already started the paperwork to freeze our joint assets as soon as the divorce was filed. By now, the apartment felt emptier. I boxed up some of Ethan's things: sweaters he never wore, gifts I'd bought him that still had price tags attached. I made a list of everything I wanted to keep, everything I was willing to walk away from. The act felt strangely liberating, like clearing out an attic after years of letting dust settle. Hannah called me late, her voice quiet. "You okay?" "I think so," I whispered. "It's weird. I thought I'd be angry, but mostly I just feel done. Ready for whatever comes next." "That's how you know you're stronger than you think, Em. You're not letting him or Brittany decide your story." I thanked her, grateful for her steady friendship. After we hung up, I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching Brooklyn shimmer in the distance. The city was full of endings and beginnings, each street a map of someone's losses and hopes. For the first time, I realized my story was changing, too. The pain was real, but so was my freedom. As the clock neared midnight, I rehearsed what I'd say when the time came. Not a screaming match, not a desperate plea, just the truth, quiet and cold and final. The next day, I woke up before Ethan. I packed a small bag, tucked the manila envelope of evidence into my purse, and texted Ms. Ramirez. "Ready." She replied instantly. "Come by at noon. We'll serve the papers today." I stood in the doorway of our apartment, taking one last look at the life we'd built. The walls, the photos, the messy drawer full of take-out menus, it all felt strangely distant. I locked the door behind me, exhaling a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Walking down our block, the city felt different, not safer, not easier, but possible. I was still afraid, but I was moving forward. And for the first time since Brittany called, I felt like myself again. The day I chose to confront Ethan was grey and wind-whipped, a typical winter afternoon in Brooklyn, the kind that makes the city feel even smaller and colder. I spent the morning at Ms. Ramirez's office, reviewing everything one last time: divorce papers, asset freeze requests, the stack of evidence that showed Ethan's double life in unflinching detail. "You don't have to do this alone," Ms. Ramirez said, watching me carefully over her glasses. "I know," I replied, steady. But I want to. I need to see his face when the truth lands. She nodded, respect flickering in her eyes. Call me if you need anything. I'll be ready. Armed with the paperwork and Hannah's folder of photos, I took a slow walk back to the apartment. The city was restless, ambulances howling in the distance, the scent of roasting chestnuts drifting from a cart near the subway, neighbors bundled against the chill. Each ordinary detail felt heightened, as if the whole world was on the edge of change. Inside our apartment, I set the stage. I laid out every piece of evidence on the coffee table: bank statements, photos of Ethan and Brittany, a printout of Brittany's Facebook post about her pregnancy, Ethan's fake account messages. I left the divorce papers on top, the pen placed purposefully beside them. Then I waited. Ethan texted that he'd be home late again, another last-minute meeting. I told him dinner would be ready anyway. My message was light, almost cheerful. There was power in pretending. When he finally walked through the door, the sky outside nearly black, he didn't notice anything at first. He kissed my cheek, tossed his coat on the rack, and started to complain about his boss. I waited, letting him talk. Letting him dig himself deeper with every casual lie. Eventually, he looked over, frowning at the papers spread across the table. What's all this? I stood, heart steady, voice calm. Sit down, Ethan. We need to talk. He blinked, caught off guard. Saturday. I watched the lines in his forehead deepen as he scanned the evidence, realization dawning in slow, excruciating waves. At first, he tried to bluff. This is crazy. You've got it all wrong. That's not. I didn't let him finish. I pressed play on my phone, the audio Hannah had pulled from the car's dashcam. Brittany's voice, clear as day, saying his name, laughing in a way I'd never heard before. Ethan paled. I kept my voice even. Don't lie to me, Ethan. Not anymore. He wilted, face crumpling. Emily, please, I can explain. No, I cut in, strength flooding my chest. You can't. And you don't need to. I know everything. The hotels, the money, Brittany. Her pregnancy. The fake accounts. All of it. For a second, I saw him for what he truly was, a frightened man clinging to a life he'd already destroyed. He reached for me, but I stepped back. I'm not here to beg, Ethan. I'm not here to scream, either. You made your choices. Now you can live with them. He stared at the divorce papers, his hand trembling. You're really doing this? Yes. I already filed. Ms. Ramirez will serve you officially by tomorrow. Joint accounts are frozen. You'll need to find another place to stay. He slumped, anger flickering, then fading into resignation. Emily, please. I still love you. I made a mistake. No, I said, shaking my head, tears finally threatening at the corners of my eyes but refusing to fall. You didn't make a mistake. You made a decision, over and over. That's not love, Ethan. That's just fear of being alone. He sat in stunned silence. I waited for him to beg, to yell, to fight for some version of our life. But he didn't. Maybe he knew it was useless. After a long pause, I spoke softly. You have tonight to pack a bag. I want you out by morning." I left him there, surrounded by the wreckage of his secrets, and walked to the bedroom. I closed the door and leaned against it, my legs shaking. My heart was pounding. But it was also lighter, aching and relieved, all at once. For the first time since Brittany's call, the silence felt like mine. I sat on the edge of the bed, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the window as snow began to fall. The city looked clean and new, even if only for a moment. I didn't know what the next chapter would hold, or how long it would hurt. But I knew I'd survived the worst of it. The truth was out, and I had my future back in my own hands. In the morning, Ethan was gone. His side of the closet was empty, his keys left on the counter. The apartment felt enormous, echoing with possibility. I called Hannah and Ms. Ramirez, thanking them for their strength and support. I texted my mom, too, telling her only, "I'm okay. Starting over." Then I brewed a cup of coffee, opened the window, and breathed in the cold, clean air. It was the first real breath I'd taken in months. The apartment felt impossibly still that first morning after Ethan left, a hollow quiet broken only by the distant hum of city buses, the whistle of wind against the window panes. I wandered from room to room, unsure what to do with myself, how to fill the sudden emptiness that had settled like dust in the corners. I started in the kitchen, brewing a pot of coffee strong enough to shake the memories loose. I'd spent so many mornings in this room making breakfast for two, humming along to whatever playlist Ethan queued up, setting aside his favorite mug. Now, it was just me, the silence, and the lingering ache of everything I'd lost. But loss, I realized, is not just about what's taken from you. Sometimes, it's the space that's left behind, the air finally clearing after a long storm. I poured my coffee, sat at the little table by the window, and let the sunlight spill over my hands. The view of the city was unchanged, same skyline, same bustle on the street below. But the view inside my own life was already shifting. Ethan's absence was everywhere. His shoes were gone from the hall. His books, always half-read and scattered, had vanished from the nightstand. The drawers where he kept his running gear and extra phone chargers were empty now, only a few dust bunnies left behind as evidence of what used to be. The first time I opened his side of the closet and found it bare, I stood in front of it for a long time, waiting for grief or rage to rise up. But what came was something quieter, relief. I spent the next days reclaiming my space, piece by piece. I boxed up the last remnants of Ethan's things, old birthday cards, a couple of shirts I'd always hated, gifts from his parents I'd never displayed. I set them by the door for him to pick up, sent him a brief, business-like text. "Your remaining things are here. Please collect by Friday." No reply came. That, too, was a kind of answer. Cleaning became a strange kind of therapy. I scrubbed the kitchen counters, rearranged the living room, and finally fixed the squeaky cabinet Ethan had always promised he'd take care of. I washed the sheets, opened every window, and let the winter air roll in. It felt like I was breathing for the first time in months. My friends rallied around me. Hannah dropped by with groceries and takeout from my favorite Thai place, refusing to let me mope in silence. She made me laugh about the little things, reminded me of the woman I was before Ethan's lies. Other friends texted, called, invited me out for coffee or dinner. I accepted sometimes, but mostly I needed the quiet, the chance to listen to my own thoughts without someone else's pain filling up the space. Work became a lifeline. I threw myself into projects, volunteering for extra shifts and late-night deadlines. My boss, Sarah pulled me aside one afternoon. "You're different lately. Stronger. If you need time off, just say the word." I shook my head, grateful. "I think I need to keep moving. I need to remember who I am." Sarah just nodded, her usual brusque self softening for a moment. "You're tougher than you look, Emily. I mean that as a compliment." Evenings were the hardest. The city's energy faded into a hush, and memories of Ethan crept in with the dark. Sometimes I'd find myself replaying old arguments, trying to pinpoint the moment everything began to unravel. Other times, I'd remember the good times, weekend trips upstate, lazy mornings in bed, the way he used to make me laugh until my stomach hurt. But the pain of betrayal always outweighed the nostalgia. One night, I found myself walking to the Brooklyn Heights promenade, drawn to the quiet sweep of the river and the glow of the Manhattan skyline. The air was icy, my breath visible in little clouds, but the cold felt invigorating. I watched the lights flicker on across the city and thought about how many other women had stood in this exact spot, picking up the pieces of a life they never expected to lose. A kind of peace settled over me. Not happiness, not yet, but something close. A promise that the worst was behind me, that I'd survived the breaking apart, and now I could begin again. At home, I started journaling, nothing fancy, just a battered notebook and a pen that felt good in my hand. I wrote about everything: the betrayal, the anger, the small moments of strength I'd found in myself. I wrote letters I'd never send to Ethan, to Brittany, to the woman I'd been before all of this began. I also wrote about hope, about the trips I wanted to take, the books I wanted to read, the way the city looked at dawn from my bedroom window. Each page felt like a little step toward freedom. By the end of that first week, I realized I hadn't cried, not really. Maybe the tears would come later, or maybe I'd shed them all in the silent nights leading up to Ethan's departure. For now, I was empty, but also open, a space cleared out and ready for something new. One afternoon, as I was returning from the grocery store, I passed a small bookstore tucked between a florist and a coffee shop. On a whim, I went inside. The owner, a woman in her 60s with a warm smile, greeted me by name. "Emily. Haven't seen you in a while. Everything okay?" I hesitated, then smiled back. "Getting there." I left with 3 new novels, a promise to join the shop's next book club meeting, and a feeling that maybe, just maybe, the future wasn't something to fear. I couldn't change what had happened, couldn't erase the pain Ethan and Brittany had brought into my life. But I could decide what happened next. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough.